Happy Father's Day to everyone. I am particularly giddy this Father's Day because it is the last year I'll be paying college tuition for my daughter. So there'll be a special jump in my step on Father's Day today. Instinct, emotional reactivity, inherited from 2 million years or more and more of evolution, and repressive belief systems that human beings have concocted, among many other factors, create and sustain confusion, chaos, and strife in the lives of individuals, families, and society. The effort to articulate out of this morass, to rise up and articulate principles and values that can help human beings navigate the world, be free of the chaos and confusion and destruction, represents one of the most ennobling qualities of the human story. A principle is a guide to action. A value is the articulation of what matters most. An illustration of principle and value working together in a unified way can be seen in the life of Abraham Lincoln. He created the principle for himself that every person he found himself disliking or hating, he would make a note to himself that he would try to get to know that person better. And he believed through experience and intuition that that would help him get past his aversion to get to know the other person as a human being. And it was part of what made him the remarkable person he was. He created a principle which could override his innate instinct to shun those who he disliked. At the same time, he was practicing the value of choosing peace over conflict, respect for differences over inflexibility, and so on. An explosion of attempts to create principles and values occurred between the 8th and 3rd century BCE in what is called the Axial Age. During this time in Persia, India, China, the Eastern Mediterranean region of West Africa, or West Asia rather, and the Greco-Roman world, various principles and values were articulated, creating what we now know of as Greek philosophy, Hinduism, the Hebrew prophets, the Confucian tradition, Buddhism, and Taoism. This activity seemed to be driven by an attempt by human beings to answer questions like, are there rules for living which help a human being establish peace within and around and among others? What is the meaning of life? What is justice? What is right? What is wrong? We are part of that great movement of history. Right here. We, sitting here in this building, are part of that great movement of history to attempt to create guiding principles and values. We see this at work in the recently created new draft of our principles and purposes. The UUA has done a wonderful job of creating a new template of principles and values captured in the shared UU values of interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity. This process of creating principles and values is noteworthy because it aids in keeping principles and values fresh and vital to meet the challenges of the day and of the moment. This action of creating principles and values is very important. It is extraordinarily important because life itself is very difficult and challenging in so many ways. But its difficulties and challenges can become much worse, even to the point of the darkest tragedy for individuals, for families, and for societies if we get out of alignment with life-serving principles and values. I believe, and I might be a minority in this perspective, but I believe that one of the chief aims of churches, synagogues, temples, mosques, and religious institutions of any kind is to support principles and values and to give them institutional support. And that is what we do, or attempt to do, each Sunday when we have a centering song, which reminds us of how to be in the world, when we recite our covenant, which reminds us how to be with one another and with ourselves. And during the new member ceremony, we are called back to this engagement with what really matters as we invite others into the fold. It is difficult for we human beings as individuals to clarify for ourselves, by ourselves, principles and values that resonate and have power, and then to have the decision to follow them, and then to commit consistently to them over time, and then to stay true to them amid the pressures and stresses of life and social groups without some form of guidance, help, and support, and that is what we are to one another. Even in response to the most powerful and incisive principles and values, it is not easy for a human being to be guided by principles and values in a sustained manner, and I believe that is one of the core missions of a place like this. UUs can find principles and values challenging, however, in unique ways. Historically, we well know that principles and values have been imposed on individuals, families and groups, and society through various forms of authoritarianism, through the charisma of a leader, or in other inherently power-over ways, which indoctrinate and do not enlighten. It is hard for UUs to see through the two common unhealthy ways of promoting principles and values and to see their underlying importance and necessity, and to understand that principles and values can be honored in a way which fully preserves the autonomy and freedom of the individual. Many of us are religious refugees, if not in the current generation, then in former generations. Many of us have fled spiritual and religious oppressions of all kinds. And out of that experience, people often come to UU churches with an explicit or implicit contract in mind, which says there are no rules here. We don't have to believe anything. Anything goes. Actually, just the opposite is true. We ask, in fact, and in truth, much more than religious communities typically ask of their people. We have developed a system of principles and values centered in life and requiring the engagement and the free assent of the individual, and not merely their passive acquiescence to dogma or belief. And we also call for the individual to discern within their own mind and heart what is true and right for them. It is a unique way of understanding faith, but we try to do it. It is difficult for people to hold in their minds simultaneously that we don't compel people to believe anything, but that we believe in the vital importance of carefully considered principles and values. With this background, let me turn to look at our first principle from our soon-to-be old principles, the worth and dignity of all persons, as a way of illustrating how principles function in our religious community and society. This principle is reaffirmed in the new statement of values under the value equity and stated as we declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. Over time, I have seen how very important this principle is. For over the years, I have observed how very many people struggle for affirmation, for a sense of being valued as a person, for a sense of being validated as a human being. And I have observed how people seemingly ceaselessly seek validation in awards, honor, relationships, money, power, attention, the opinions of others, status, a feeling of being better than others by any means necessary, whether that is materially or intellectually true or in 1,000 different other ways. Many people live in a kind of hell in which they devalue themselves through a continual calculation of their value based on comparisons of age, beauty, power, money, status, physical appearance, and in so many other ways. Unfortunately, in our times, digital platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and others have amplified this game of ceaseless comparisons. But nothing can ever give us a sense of validation that we have not given to ourselves. This is the truth of the first principle that calls us back to ourselves. We simply have to accept our own and others' worth and dignity as we are, without needing to be, do, or say anything to acquire it. This is so simple, it is hard to believe. We are surrounded by and immersed in influences which undermine continually the value of persons. And the first principle stands against this and embraces the belief that one's own life, whatever the situation, whatever our past or imperfections, whatever our known and unknown limitations, our own life as it is in each moment has a value and meaning that nothing can diminish, alter, or take it away. This involves letting go of all comparisons, all evaluations, all judgments, all sense of our own incompleteness and imperfections, and affirming our own worthiness without qualification in the here and now. And this is so simple, it is hard to believe. Each of us has a very important contribution to make to life. If we are grounded in knowing our own worthiness, if that is an incontestable article of belief we have about ourselves, we are empowered to live in dignity. Everybody here, every person on earth has an important contribution to make to life. Our contribution as individuals, in fact, is something no one else on earth can duplicate because of our special and unique relationship to life, our unique history, and our context. We can't wait for someone to deliver a special letter to us from FedEx or someone else telling us this. We have to just know it with conviction that it is true and act like it. And then we begin to see it really is true. This congregation is on the cusp of something new. It is creating a new identity, even as it integrates what is most precious and valuable from the past. Something is about to begin to accelerate this process of movement towards shared ministry by preparing for a new settled minister. But have no doubt, the most important people for what happens to the future of this congregation are you, the people sitting here, and those who are members. I hope you will understand, each of you, that one of your most precious gifts to the world is this message that you are inviting people into, to be influenced by life-giving and life-serving principles and values. May we, following the words of Gandhi, seek to be the change we want to see happen in the world. May it be so. Amen.